What is up, everybody? This is Adam. Welcome back to Fouled Out. We are shifting gears here on the podcast today and starting to talk about the NBA playoffs. The first round just ended last night with Rockets Warriors game 7, and there's a lot to talk about. We are going to start today by playing a little draft and debate game where we're going to draft the futures of the 8 teams that were eliminated in the first round of the playoffs and debate which ones we would rather have. I also have one major trade for all 8 teams to pull off this offseason. So we're going to spring those on Matt and get his reaction. You guys know how much I love playing with the trade machine. So you're not going to want to miss those. But first, just a reminder, you can reach out to us, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. Let us know who you want your team to trade for this offseason or what big offseason move you want your team to pull off. I have some doozies on the podcast today. I think you guys are really going to like them. But for now, let's grab Matt. Let's talk NBA. Let's go. All right, Matt is here. I think ready to talk some NBA playoffs.
No,
I know
never again.
Matt is not particularly happy about how the first round went for his Pistons, like the only team I can't call the Motor City Kitties.
Yeah, right. Well,
But
the Wings.
yeah, but you're not that into hockey though. We don't really talk hockey.
No,
Are you are you going to be able to get through a whole NBA podcast here?
we'll see.
See how long it takes for Matt to say fuck the Knicks. So I briefly introduced the little game that we're playing today in the opening. We have a lot of time left to talk about the 8 remaining teams
Yeah.
in the NBA playoffs. And there's definitely a lot of really interesting things to watch for in round 2. My biggest thing I'm watching for in round 2 is if Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren from the Oklahoma City Thunder can be consistent second scorers against the Nuggets. I mean, I don't think there's any reason that OKC should lose that series, except for the fact that you can't fully count out Jokic. But they were the better team against Dallas last year until they couldn't find a consistent secondary scorer. And it's been my biggest thing for them this whole season. So we're watching for that. Going to watch how Curry attacks the Wolves. Be really interesting and see if anybody can be a threat to Boston in the East. So
hmm
plenty to talk about moving forward. But before we start doing that, I want to talk about the 8 teams that got eliminated. And we thought the best way to do that would be a little like draft and debate show where Matt and I are going to go back and forth and we're going to draft basically what team would you rather be right now out of these 8, or whose future would you rather have out of the 8 teams that were eliminated. And as a special bonus surprise, I have come up with one major trade for all 8 teams that I'm going to spring on Matt to get his reaction live on the air. They've all been run through the NBA trade machine to make sure they work salary wise for next year. And Matt, I have some absolute bangers in here. One of the teams we'll be talking about is Matt's Detroit Pistons, and I have a interesting major trade for them that we'll see if Matt would do or not.
Yeah, we'll see.
Matt, would you like the first pick in the draft or the second pick?
Sure, I'll take the first.
All right. So
Uh,
out of the 8 teams that were eliminated, whose future would you want the most right now?
I'm going to take the Detroit Pistons, shockingly enough. You know, I have a lot that I could say about the way they played in that series, but at the end of the day, this is an incredibly young team. I mean, they quite frankly should have beaten the number 3 seed. Looked like the better team when they weren't actively throwing the ball away
Yeah.
or just like dribbling into traffic for no apparent reason.
Usually when I'm talking sports with someone and they're like, "Oh, my team should have won. We were the better team." And I'm like, they're like, "Oh, this and this happened. And if that didn't happen, blah blah blah." I'm kind of like, yeah, I don't know. I watched every single minute of that series. The Pistons are the better team. The
Yeah,
Pistons are better than the New York Knicks. And they played better than the Knicks for
yeah,
like all except for 5 minutes of that series.
yeah.
And that's what doomed them.
And they did all of that without Isaiah Stewart for 5 of the 6 games. And not a single game did they have Jaden Ivey, who is the secondary scorer that everyone is going to sit here and say that Detroit needs.
So I had the Pistons number 2 on my big board, and I'll tell you who I have number 1 when it's my turn. But
Yeah,
the reason I agree that the Pistons should be very high on this list is that you now have every single thing you could want in order to start building a championship contender. So you have a bona fide top 15 guy who has top 5 upside in Cade Cunningham. He just averaged 25, 8.3, and 8.7 in his first playoff series with a 45% effective field goal percentage.
yeah.
You have other young assets who you can either trade or develop. So you mentioned
Hmm.
Jaden Ivey, Jalen
Hmm.
Duren, uh, Asor Thompson,
Yep.
thought played pretty well for stretches in this game. And then Ron Holland is still a guy who's interesting.
Hmm.
You found your coach. JB Bickerstaff had a really good year as the Pistons coach.
Yep.
I think he had some questionable rotations and calls in this series, but not enough for me to be like, this isn't the guy.
Hmm.
You have cap space this offseason to make
Yeah.
improvements. And now the big question for the Pistons, though, is what is the next step? Because Beasley and Schroeder, who became very, very important parts of this team with Jaden Ivey out, are both free agents and they're both in for big paydays.
Yeah.
So the question is kind of where do you go from here? But this is 100% the base that you would want to start from and would also be my number 1 pick if it wasn't for a certain franchise being in the running here.
It's funny being a fan of this team because heading into the season, I'm pretty sure I said it on this podcast multiple times. Talk to me when you get to 35 wins, right? Like making the playoffs wasn't really on the radar. Maybe a play in, but not the playoffs outright. Um, so to see the jump that they made this year with largely the same roster shows a lot of potential, and it also vindicates a lot of my thoughts on last year that Monty Williams was the real issue.
Monty Williams was a huge issue. Health has been a big issue,
Hmm.
trying to keep Cade on the floor. But
Hmm.
yeah, you had a couple guys who took steps forward this
Yeah.
year. I mean, I think Cade's been excellent for a while now
Hmm.
when he's healthy. But like Jalen Duren,
Hmm.
better this season. Beef Stew, like
Yep.
even Ivy looked good before he went
I
down.
I I also want to say that I think Tobias Harris was like a huge, huge addition for this
Yeah.
team. You know, in terms of like the box score, what he did this season, it's whatever. Although I think he was awesome in that next series. But just that veteran presence and kind of like helping showing these young players like how to show up to work and get better day after day. Like they needed that guy in that locker room.
I feel like signings like that always get clowned when they happen. And I think that
Hmm.
we joked about it on this podcast, not because it was a bad signing, but just because we were like, God, Tobias Harris just always finds a way to get a bag.
Yep.
But it was low key very important to have him there for multiple seasons. So are you
Yeah.
part of the, would you rather like re-sign your guys like Beasley and Schroeder and then run it back with the same roster and see where you're at next year? Or are you open to starting to make win now moves this offseason?
For me, Schroeder 100% should be coming back. Beasley, I don't know what's gonna happen. I really don't. Um,
I could legitimately see Beasley's market getting out of control
yep,
this
yeah,
offseason with how many
yep.
threes he just made this season.
So I'm okay with letting him walk if it gets too crazy, but there has to be a plan as to how we're replacing that role on this team, knowing full and well that we're not going to have someone who's going to make 300 plus threes. Someone has to be that microwave three-point shooter off the
Mm-hmm.
bench. If you want to bring in someone big, like that big addition, you just have to know that it's going to fit and vibe with this roster because that was a unit that we had this year. Like they all played cohesively together.
Well, let me throw a trade at you, our first trade of the night.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to warn you ahead of time that you are not going to like the names that are in this trade from the Pistons side. But I want you to keep an open mind for a minute. The Pistons send Jaden Ivey, Tobias Harris, Beef Stew, and Simone Fontecchio. Font- Fontecchio
Fun Fontecchio.
to the
Yeah.
Sacramento Kings for Domantas Sabonis and Malik Monk. And you get a massive front court upgrade in Domantas Sabonis, and you get your microwave scorer, a guy who can do all of the things that you talked about with Schroeder and Beasley, but at a much higher level.
Here's the thing. And you know me, like I am a big depth guy. I believe in depth and having more pieces that can contribute rather than fewer but higher octane guys. A trade like that just makes me feel like you are one injury away from your entire season going down the drain.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of when the Kings traded Tyrese Halliburton, where it's like,
Hmm.
hey, we have this young guard we really think can develop, but we're going to trade him. The big difference here is that we did that to build our team around De'Aaron Fox, which is a massive
Yeah.
mistake. And I think like Sabonis with Cade could
Hmm.
potentially be extremely nasty. But if your starting lineup is like Cade, I don't know if Monk's a starter there. You try to bring back Beasley or what you do with the two. Then you
Hmm.
don't have Tobias Harris.
Yep.
Then, but it's Sabonis and Duran in the front court, which I think is very
Yeah.
doable.
Tobias Harris was the guy that they had get all up in Cat's grill for an entire series because Isaiah Stewart was out.
Yeah.
So now, like, like, literally, other than Duran, where's your beef?
The other option here that I considered, so I put Beef Stew in there so I could get Malik Monk
Hmm.
into the trade.
Yeah,
If you take Beef Stew out, you can do the other three, Ivy, Harris, and Simone, just for Sabonis. And
yeah,
Harris has to be in there to make the salaries work. That's the
yeah,
problem. But then you keep Beef
yeah.
Stew, and at least you have the depth. But something to consider. But you sound like you're part of the wait and see tribe.
Yes, I like this core.
I do too. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Like, you know how much I wanted Ivy coming out in that draft, and then seeing how he looked prior to the injury this year, like I really want to see this team at full strength in the playoffs before we start sending pieces out to try and make it work.
That's fair. I also my team is not blowing it up. We're gonna make
No.
we're gonna make a stupid win now move. We're
Yeah.
pushing all of our chips. I purposely said that we were only going to draft the 8 teams that were eliminated in the first round of the playoffs so that we don't have to talk about my team. Because as miserable as you are about your team losing, I am 100 times more miserable about the wheel of mediocrity that my team is stuck on and continues to.
Yeah, you guys are in a rough spot.
Where our brand new GM said that he wants to build around Zach LaVine.
Yeah.
I want everyone to think about that for a minute. Zach LaVine, the Bulls couldn't pay someone to take Zach LaVine last summer, and he's our centerpiece.
The Wolves didn't want to do that back when he was in his 20s.
So for my first pick, I'm going to go with the team that's number one on my board, and that is the LA Lakers, who were eliminated by the Wolves in 5 games. LA Lakers fans are going to clip this. They're going to save this. They're going to love this forever. But I'm going to say it anyway. If I can be the LA Lakers, I am always going to be the LA Lakers for 2 reasons. One, they have Luka Doncic, who everyone is shitting on right now. The 180 people have done on Luka in the last couple days since they've been eliminated is absolutely incredible to me, where Lakers fans are like, oh my God, I had no idea he was this amazing and blah, blah, blah. And they get eliminated and all these stories come out and it's like, oh yeah, Luka's actually kind of fat and kind of slow and doesn't play defense and he might be an alcoholic. Like everybody needs to chill the fuck out. This dude just averaged 37-6 in a
Yeah.
playoff series. It was not his fault you lost. And part of me wonders if some of these stories are potentially being planted by another superstar who's on that team because he wants us to ignore how bad his record has been in the playoffs recently and how many times he has been eliminated in the first round and how that should affect his legacy as potentially being the greatest player of all time.
Yeah.
Wouldn't put it past him to have Maverick Carter put a Luka's fat story out there. But you have Luka, who, no matter what anybody says to me, is one of the top 3 players in the NBA and has had one of the greatest starts to a career in the history of basketball. He's an absolutely incredible player, and I am absolutely sick and tired of the slander. Reason 2 is that you're the Lakers, and you can never discount the fact that other teams are going to willingly bend over backwards to give this franchise whatever they need this
That
offseason.
honestly truly is the most compelling argument.
The Lakers kind of fell into the Luka thing at the trade deadline. And the roster that they had around Luka and LeBron James was never the roster they needed to have around those guys to make a deep
Yeah.
playoff run. Like, you think about what made Luka really good in Dallas, it's like having the secondary ball handler playmaker and having multiple lob threats. So the Lakers tried to do that with the Mark Williams trade, but then failed him on the physical. And then Mark Williams laughed at them after they got eliminated, which was hilarious. But you can't discount the fact that Rob Pelinka is going to be fielding calls from people this offseason who are like, oh, who do you need from our roster? Would you like Cade Cunningham? Would you like Paolo Banchero? Who would you like, LA? You can have them. Like they're going to end up with Giannis Antetokounmpo and still not give up Austin Reeves in the trade this offseason. Like you can never discount the absolute bullshit that this franchise is going to pull out. But I really do feel like, you get Luka at the trade deadline and you're trying to make the Luka and LeBron thing work, but you didn't have time to rework the rest of your roster. Now this offseason, you rework that roster. You bring in like the proverbial Daniel Gaffords and the Derek Lively's, and you go and you try to make some trades to make things happen. So let me throw a LA Lakers trade at you. The Lakers send Austin Reeves, Dalton Connect, and Dorian Finney-Smith to the New York Knicks for Jalen Brunson. No, for Josh Hart, Mitchell Robinson, and Miles McBride.
Yeah, I could see it.
I look at the Lakers right now, and I watch that. You watch that series against the Wolves, and the very first question is, who is going to be the primary defender on Anthony Edwards in this series? You don't have a good option to throw at the Anthony Edwards and like the scoring guards of the world. you really don't have a great defensive option to throw out against a lot of scorers. So I think Josh Hart brings that to the table. Also, Josh Hart can shoot a little bit. He's kind of like a little bit of a 3-and-D guy and kind of brings like the grit and the grind stuff that you are
Hmm.
really going to need on a team led by Luka and LeBron. You need
Yeah.
that like dirty work guy. So I like that. I like Mitchell Robinson as a rim running threat. He can't stay healthy, but if he's like your second center and he's playing like 20 minutes a game and he's a rim runner slash rim protector, I like that. And then Miles McBride, defensive minded kind of backup guard. They can bring in another ball handler kind of guy.
Yeah.
For the Knicks, you're getting more scoring and shooting, basically. I think the Knicks, for all of the guys they have, are still somehow lacking that secondary playoff scoring they need.
Hmm.
Like their offense did not look good against the Pistons. I do not expect it to look good against Boston. So I want to add more offense to the Knicks. And I think Austin Reeves does that. And I know Lakers fans are probably pissed I'm putting Austin Reeves in a trade. They're like, that's too much. That's too much. But Austin Reeves is like the perfect example of why we do our NBA top 30 after the playoffs are over.
Yeah.
Because if you did it at the end of the regular season, he's probably in that 25 to 30 range.
Hmm.
And then he's a ghost against the Timberwolves.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it's a good reminder that he is not as valuable as Lakers fans think he is.
No, he's a good, not great player.
But I start liking that team a lot more as a contender if you add like a Josh Hart type of person. And then now we're talking like, okay, we're going to get some free agents. We're going to have more rim runners with Mitchell Robinson. So
I I I think that's a like mutually beneficial trade. I don't necessarily believe that the Knicks would go for it. I think any team that's coached by Thibodeau is gonna want to hang on to their tough, gritty defensive guys.
honestly, like
But
I love Josh Hart. And
man,
if he was on my team, you would have to pay me like 150 cents on the dollar to get him from me.
so I was thinking about him during that series, and honestly, like the journey he has been on as a player, like, because for a long time, he was just kind of like that trade piece guy, right? You heard about him in all the Lakers trade rumors as like this big trade piece. And like honestly, like good for him that he's turned out to be an actual legitimately good player.
Yeah.
Because most of those guys don't.
He's like a journeyman who just kind of like really found a home and a role in New York.
Yeah.
And I think like any team he's on, he's kind of the heart and soul of that team. So it'd be really hard to deal him. But you're getting a pretty good deal back there with Reeves and Connect and Dorian
Mhm.
Finney-Smith. So
Yeah. I hear a lot of your arguments for the Lakers, and I didn't not consider them. But the big thing going against them with all of that, they're still in the West.
that's fair. And also, like, I don't think it's going to happen. But what if Luka doesn't resign?
Right.
And like LeBron leaves and Luka leaves. And now you're like,
Well,
oh,
here's the thing for especially for LeBron, where is Kyrie and Anthony Davis?
I'd be fine with LeBron leaving though. If I were them, if I had Luca long term and I'm like, okay, now I can fully turn this franchise over and start
If
building
you
around
have
him.
Luka long term,
Yeah,
like sure, but also that's still like putting you kind of back to the drawing board a little bit.
that's true. LeBron going to Dallas would be the funniest shit
Oh yeah, no, it would be
ever.
absolutely hysterical.
And Nico Harrison just comes out after and he's like, this was our master plan all along. We partnered with Clutch to get Kyrie and Anthony Davis here. I was looking at adding defense to the Lakers and
Hmm.
I wanted to add Jalen Suggs from the Magic. Do you know how much
Yeah.
the Magic are paying Jalen Suggs next year?
No. I
$35 million.
what?
Yeah. He has a $35 million per year contract for like the next 4 or 5 years.
For why?
It's fucking because he's good on defense, but it's fucking crazy. I was like, I was using a trade machine. It's called like Fans Pro because they fast forward to next year basically for you to make offseason trades where ESPN's trade machine still has everybody's salary from this year. And I clicked it and it said 35 mil for 5 years. And I was like, oh, they fucked that up. They must have meant 35 million over 5 years. So I looked it up on basketball reference. And nope, they didn't fuck it up, Matt. They didn't fuck it up. All right, who are you picking for team three?
As I recompose myself with
Yeah. Oh,
the knowledge that Jalen Suggs is making $35 million a year.
I couldn't even like get him in a trade to the Lakers. It like I couldn't make the salaries work because he's so expensive.
I am gonna go with the Houston Rockets.
Yeah, that's who I had
Uh,
at number three too.
and just there honestly a lot of similarities to Detroit's situation. Really young, really talented. Just it's and they have I want to say a lot of draft capital going forward too as
Mm-hmm.
well.
They do.
So um it's just hard to look at their situation and not think that they're going to continue to be in position to potentially be a contender.
I think there's one really, really big important distinction between their situation and Detroit's situation, though. And that is that Detroit already has their guy, their
They have their
franchise guy,
alpha. Yeah,
and the Rockets do not.
no.
And I came away from the Rockets series against the Warriors a lot more skeptical about a lot of the pieces on their team. Whereas with Detroit, I was way more impressed with the pieces, right? Like I already knew Cade, but like
Yeah.
Jalen Duran and some of these other guys, I was like, oh wow,
Mm.
like these are guys who can play in the playoffs. And with the Rockets,
Yeah.
I'm looking at the roster right now, and I'm like, outside of Fred Van Vliet, Amen Thompson, and Alperen Şengün, I don't think Jalen Green and Jabari Smith Jr. can play in the playoffs. Reed Shepard didn't play this season. Like, I feel like we came into the playoffs and a lot of people were saying, oh man, the Rockets are like a perfect destination for Giannis. They got a lot of young pieces. They got a lot of picks. They could put a really good trade package together. And now I'm looking at it and I'm like, dude, if I'm the Bucks and I'm considering trading with the Rockets, I'm saying that either Thompson or Şengün has to be in that deal
Yeah.
or I'm not pulling the trigger. And
I mean,
those are the two guys though, where if you don't have those guys when you get Giannis,
yeah.
are you a contender?
Yeah. In fairness, I think if you are trading Giannis, like looking at a team like that, that kind of has to be your starting point with that team, anyways.
Yeah, I have the Giannis trade coming up in this podcast. But I one thing I want to say about the Giannis trade before we get to the Bucks, specifically about the Houston Rockets, is I have seen a lot of people on TikTok and Instagram and everywhere else pitching Giannis trades and saying, "Oh, New Orleans and Houston and all these other places." The one thing you need to keep in mind with the Giannis trade is that it does not matter who can offer the best package. What matters is where Giannis tells the Bucks he wants to go because that is the team you're dealing with. And because Giannis is under contract for a few more years, you can maybe demand some more capital back. But if Giannis does not say, I want to go to the Houston Rockets, I don't care if
Hmm.
Şengün and Thompson are both in the trade. It's not happening.
Yeah.
That's the NBA that we live in nowadays. So
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people pitching like a Zion Williamson and other stuff for Giannis trade. It's not happening because I guarantee Giannis is not telling the Bucks I want to go to New Orleans. That is never ever happening. It's going to be a bigger market team. It's going to be where he wants to go and he will force his way there and it doesn't matter what anybody else offers.
With Giannis, I honestly don't know if it's necessarily the market that's going to matter to him at this point. but it's going to have to be a franchise that he knows it, like understands how the business of basketball and is going to put the team in a position to win.
Yeah. Oh, I have the Giannis trade later. It is like I think it is the best one. I worked very hard on it. Got to respect Giannis. My sister and my brother-in-law, big Bucks fans. Got to do right by Giannis. But for the Houston Rockets, so you don't have your guy, and like I just said with Giannis, you're not getting a super legit guy unless there's a guy who demands to go there. That's just how the NBA works. If you don't have like a top 10 guy who goes, I want to go to Houston, then it doesn't matter what you have.
Yeah.
But I do have a Houston trade I feel like is potentially very interesting because if I'm not getting Giannis, then I'm not trading Thompson and Şengün. Those two are my untouchables. I think Fred VanVleet has to be there next season with how well he just played in that series against the Warriors.
Yeah.
Kind of a reminder of how good he can be in the playoffs. But I want you to buckle up because this is a doozy. The Rockets send Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, and Tari Eason to the Clippers for Kawhi Leonard and Chris Dunn. And I'm cheating a little bit because we're going to talk about the Clippers, and this is the Clippers trade too. So if you're the Rockets, you need a guy. Right now, the Rockets are a team who have too many guys, but also somehow not enough guys. That's my takeaway from the Warriors series is that they have all these great assets and all these great young guys, but do they have 8 guys who can play in a playoff series? Right now, the answer is no. You know who could play in a playoff series, Matt?
Kawhi fucking Leonard,
Kawhi fucking Leonard.
if he plays.
25, 8, and 5 in a 7-game series against Denver. Pretty much the only person who it wasn't his fault that the Clippers lost that series.
Yeah.
You're kind of getting Kawhi cheaply here because Jalen Green is not the asset that he once was after like I think people will look at that game 2 against the Warriors and be like, look, he can do it. He scored 38 points and just ignore the fact that he averaged about 9 points for the other 6 games in that series. But you're getting a legit playoff dude for Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, and Tari Eason. And you don't have to give up any of your big pieces. You don't have to give up any of your picks. So your war chest is dry if you decide you want to go after, all the powder is dry if you want to go after someone else.
Yeah.
But you get him cheaply because he only played 37 games this season in the regular season. But he showed in that series against Denver that he still got it when it comes to the playoffs. So the Rockets have been linked to Kevin Durant. There's been a lot of smoke there. And I look at it right now and I'm like, I think I'd rather have Kawhi Leonard than Kevin Durant.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
I mean, we we talked about LeBron James's recent playoff record, but Kevin Durant's recent playoff record has not been kind to him either.
yeah. He also
Uh,
didn't make the playoffs this year, which
yeah,
is a tough look. And he was very, very Kevin Durant about it this season.
yeah. I think it's a swing worth taking if you're not all in on Jalen Green.
Looking at how Jalen Green just performed in that series,
Yeah,
I think it's a pretty low risk swing for the Rockets. But also from the Clippers' perspective, when is Kawhi ever going to be this valuable again?
yeah,
If you don't trade him this offseason, you're losing him for nothing, basically,
yeah.
in a couple of years. A couple more disappointing years where you're not really going anywhere because
Hmm.
you paired him with James Harden. And as great as it looked all regular season, James Harden was so James Harden in that game
Yeah,
7. So James Harden. Like, oh God, it's kind of nice to know that as crazy as things get in the world, some things will never change.
I know. Like,
Thing of beauty.
through 6 games, you're thinking, oh man, James Harden, he might actually get to the second round. And then he reminded us all of the truth.
No, the real ones knew. The real ones knew what was going to happen in game 6 and game 7. He was 2 of 8 from the floor in game 7. So, like, he was shooting poorly and also just refusing to shoot. Like, he only took 8
Yeah.
shots. So bad. I am on the board with pick number 4. And I'm going to go with the Orlando Magic for pick 4 here. So, the Magic are another team that have a lot of solid young guys. They also have their franchise guy and Paulo. He was excellent against the Celtics. Like he was awesome. But my biggest issue with the Magic is that they are basically locked into this roster. So they have about $200 million committed next year. So they have no cap space. And really what they're looking at right now is relying on one of the other young guys on the roster to make the jump to being like the second banana. I think a lot of people would point at Franz Wagner and be like, well, he's the guy who can do it. But we just haven't seen it at a high enough level to make the Magic a contender yet.
Yeah.
You know, I already mentioned they're starting to pay Jalen Suggs $35 million starting next season for 5 years. I don't really believe he's the guy that can make the jump necessary for this team to become a contender. So I have a fear that this team is just going to kind of be stuck where they are now, where they're like a first or second round exit every single season. And we're just waiting for someone to take the jump to push them over the top.
I think there's some potential there for Wagner. And in fairness to him, there's, if I remember correctly, some injuries where he lost some time. So like I'll give him a little bit of grace there, but like they are where they are right now regardless, and they don't have that bona fide number two.
Yeah. They really, really need a guy who can put the biscuit in the basket at a high
Yeah.
level,
Mhm.
aside from Paulo, because the defense has been very good for a couple of years now, but the
Yeah.
offense is like it's a tough watch.
Yeah.
It's a tough watch. So with that in mind, a trade for the Orlando Magic to acquire Mr. Biscuit Basket. The Orlando Magic send Franz Wagner to the Memphis Grizzlies for Desmond Bain. It's a 1-for-1. Desmond Bain can score the rock
Yeah.
and can score the rock in the playoffs. Kind of fits perfectly with Paulo. On the Grizzlies side, I kind of looked at the fact that I don't really know if this Ja Morant Desmond Bain pairing is going to work out with two offensive minded guards in the backcourt. And we'll talk about the Grizzlies in a little bit because I think it's kind of debatable whether this can work or not. But the Grizzlies' wing depth has been an issue for them basically as long as the Grizzlies have existed. They've never had a good wing in the entire time, like, because that was always the problem with the grit and grind Grizzlies. Is like,
Yeah.
wow, they have everything they need except for one goddamn good wing. Let's sign
Yeah.
Chandler Parsons to one of the biggest contracts.
Oh my
Let's give
God.
Chandler Parsons $100 million. And it's still kind of the problem because you have Morant and Bain, you got Jaren Jackson Jr. There's no like that kind of small forwardist position, like what used to be a small forward, a wing. There's just nobody there.
Yeah.
Franz Wagner, like you just said, like he can, I think Magic fans are going to be like, hey, he can score, but he can play a little offense. He plays pretty good defense. You think you could develop him a little bit, and it's kind of a better fit for both
He's
teams.
he's a guy who's got a little bit of everything in his bag. And I think that potentially, if this swap was made, some of his, playmaking ability could also be a big benefit to that Grizzlies offense.
Mhm.
I don't think it's just about, like, can you put the ball in the bucket, right? It's like, are you able to handle the ball, get the defense to react, create opportunities for others? Um, I think that might be more beneficial for the Grizzlies right now. Um,
I know you.
although I will say, like, having someone who can shoot on the perimeter like Bane when you have someone like Ja as your point guard is always going to be a good thing as well.
Yeah, we're gonna talk.
Ja's not a great shooter. You need to stretch that defense.
Yeah, we'll talk about the Grizzlies in a little bit here too, because I'm not 100% convinced the Grizzlies need to make a trade, but this is your favorite one so far. I could tell. I saw your face when I said it.
Yeah, is it my favorite? I don't know. I like the Kawhi one a lot.
Trust me, your favorites are coming up. I think as we get deeper in the list, I have better.
But I do like this one. And I think that Bane would probably do really well in Orlando as well.
Yeah, I think
Um,
Bane with Paulo and then Ja with Wagner and Jaren Jackson Jr. is like that feels like a better fit to me for both teams. That's why I like it. But who are you taking for team number 5?
going with the Grizzlies.
Okay, I had someone else at number 5. I had the Grizzlies at 6.
I don't think I would have gone with the Grizzlies had Ja not been cooking the way he was before he got hurt.
Yeah. I wrote
Uh,
down that if I was a Grizzlies fan, I would be talking myself into the fact that at the very least, we could have given the Thunder a series
yeah,
before. Like, so in game 3, they were up by 29 before Lou Dort publicly executed Ja Morant on an NBA court. And then they
it
only
was pretty
lost.
bad.
That is atrocious. I'm surprised I didn't. I feel like there's not more backlash because it's Ja Morant, but
You know,
that was pretty bad. They only lost game 4 by 2 points without Ja Morant.
yeah,
So if I'm a Grizzlies fan, I'm like, hey man, Ja Morant plays, we win games 3 and 4, and now we're back in OKC.
yeah,
Honestly, even as not a Grizzlies fan, I don't think it's that much of a stretch to say that. And I
no.
and I'm not a big fan of Ja Morant.
Like he can be so fun to watch, but there are definitely elements of his game that frustrate me. Um, that being said, like looking at where we are on this list, um, and I think I know which team you probably have above them, but I guess I'm just gauging the situation a little bit differently. Um,
Yeah. It's the
but like,
same
but
conversation we just had about the Pistons and the Lakers, basically.
but what Ja can do to just take over a game, like there's really only one player remaining on this list that can still do that, and he may not want to stay with that team, so
Yeah. The other thing about the Grizzlies is that somehow they have cap space this summer. So
yeah.
they're going to be $19 million under the cap.
Mhm.
Could they just stand pat and like add someone like Malik Beasley?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're running back this team. I mean, they got to re-sign Santi Aldama. So we'll see what that looks like. But or like maybe you just let him go and you're like, hey, we're gonna sign someone like Beasley, get some more offense in here, some more shooting and firepower, and run this back because we think that we're a
Yeah.
good team. Like, look at what we just did with the Thunder. So um
Yeah.
my trade for them was also the Bane for Wagner, though, and
Yeah, I
we talked
figured.
about that.
Yeah.
So Uh, the only team I had ahead of the Grizzlies, and you already know who this is, but for the listeners, I had the Miami Heat at number 5. So I think the Jimmy Butler thing really messed up their season with all of the drama and just the
You
complete
think?
chaos that was their season. But you're still the Miami Heat. You still have Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra. And I just don't think you can ever rule out Miami as a destination for absolute superstars. Like, wouldn't I know with Giannis, it's like, yeah, he might just want to go somewhere where he can win and play good basketball. But like, also, it wouldn't shock me if Giannis is like, I want to
But
play in Miami.
but this is what I was saying though. Like it might not be about playing in Miami, right? It might be this is Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley. They're going to put me in a position to be able to win.
Yeah. And I get to be in Miami.
Yeah, right.
But I think like, we've seen with Wade and Bosh and LeBron and Jimmy Butler and all the, Shaq and all the guys that have come through this franchise, it's hard for me to believe that they're not going to find a way to acquire another one
Yeah.
here. And you still have Bam Adebayo, who we love.
Hmm.
So my trade for the Miami Heat is where I got 2 trades left because we already did the Clippers, and the last 2 are pretty spicy. The Heat send Tyler Hero, Nikola Jovic, Kalel Ware, Jamie Jarquez, Golden State's 25 first, the Heat's 26 first, the Heat's 29 first, and a 2030 pick swap, and the Heat's 2031 first. 2
For Damian Lillard?
to the Phoenix Suns for Devin Booker. And we go into next season with the Heat having Devin Booker and Bam Adebayo. And Matt trying his best not to be a Heat fan.
My initial thoughts are okay, we're gutting the team other than Bam to get him in there. And then I'm realizing Pat Riley will somehow find a way to get like 3 second round picks that will all be decent level rotation and starting level players because he's done it before.
So even if you do that trade, you're not completely barren because you still have Davion Mitchell, Terry Rozier. I mean, like not like I'm naming the
You're
greatest names
really
here.
selling me on this.
Duncan Robinson, Andrew Wiggins, Haywood Highsmith. I mean, like they have other guys on the roster who can play a bit,
They have
but
bodies.
also don't put it past Pat Riley for this not to be the only trade they pull off. And
Yeah.
they send some other guys to a rebuilding team and get, you know, they're like, oh, yeah, we'll take on your bad contract. And it's someone awesome. It's like Chris Middleton, and all of a sudden Chris Middleton bounces back. So, but I don't know, man. I feel like just having Devin Booker and Bam Adebayo, I'm like, that is a really good 1-2 and 2 guys who fit very well together. And I can
Yeah.
build around that.
Yeah. I do think that they would fit very well together. Um yeah, I also think that if Devin Booker says he wants to be traded, it's probably back to Detroit. But
Yeah. I knew you weren't going to like it just because it doesn't have Devin
yeah.
Booker going to
I mean,
Detroit.
he's not been subtle about it.
While we're on the topic, would you do like the all in? It's Ivy, Tobias Harris, what, beef stew, Ron Holland, and basically all of your picks for Devin Booker? Like every pick you're allowed to trade?
It would have to be like alternating years picks,
I think it has to be
essentially.
beef stew, alternating years picks, and then
Yeah.
swaps.
I would
I'm leaving you Tom. I'm leaving
be,
you Thompson and Durant.
yeah. So I think what I would end up doing there is be like, let's get a third team involved.
Like, I'm not saying no, but
Let's
it's,
what? Yeah, giving up beef stew is always going to be hard for me.
I know he
Um,
kind of has the same effect on the Pistons that I said Josh Hart has on the Knicks, where he's kind of the
yeah,
heart and soul of the team. So,
yeah,
but it would be an expensive trade, but you'd have Cade Cunningham and Devin Booker for the next like 8 years, 10 years, whatever it
yeah.
is. So, we got two teams left. Who would you rather be between the Bucks and the Clippers? And this is the dark portion of this podcast.
I'm gonna take the Bucks because if Giannis demands a trade, then you are probably going to get a very strong haul in return for him that will give you the opportunity to start a rebuild.
I hate to do this because, like I mentioned, my sister and her husband are Bucks fans. I honestly think the best case scenario for the Bucks right now is that Giannis demands a trade. And maybe he doesn't force his way to some team that can't offer them a good package. I think the Bucks have more leverage with trading Giannis than we've seen with a lot of other superstars. So Giannis is under contract for 2 more seasons and then has a player option for $63 million in the 27-28 season. The future for Milwaukee is dark right now. So Giannis just averaged 33, 15, and 7 in a playoff series, and you lost in 5 games to the
Yeah.
Pacers, who I think the majority of people would not put the Pacers in the contender category. Although they did beat Cleveland in game 1 last night. So we will see. But the Dame trade was already kind of a mess. It really has
Yeah.
not worked out. And now he tore his Achilles.
Yeah. Well, it's not just that. So he had blood clots in his calf towards the end of the season, got treatment,
Yeah.
somehow got cleared to play, and then almost immediately tore his Achilles. So,
So you're paying him $54 million to sit next
yep.
season.
And beyond that, you have the looming question of can he even play anymore? Right?
Yeah.
Like, there's the Achilles, but also, like, I mean, the blood clots are exactly what did in Chris Bosh.
Even with a clean bill of health, I think it's questionable for a 35-year-old small guard to come back off a torn Achilles.
Yeah.
And he you're paying him $54 million next year to do nothing. And then he has a player option for the following year for $58 million, which I'm going to go ahead and predict here live on the podcast that he's picking that one up. So, not great there. You have $165 million committed next season, and that's without re signing Gary Trent Jr. or Brooke Lopez. And then maybe the toughest thing of it all is that the Bucks don't outright own their first round pick until 2031. You have 26, 27, 28, and 30 swaps with New Orleans and Portland, thanks to the Drew Holiday and the Damian Lillard trades. You have no pick this year and you have no pick in 29. There's no point in tanking because you'll just get your pick swapped out. So you can't even do that. Pretty much the only thing they can do is if Giannis asks for the trade, which, like, I mean, I guess you could keep Giannis and just this is your future. where you're just getting eliminated in the first round of the playoffs every single year. If even that, because like God, Gary Trent was really good for them in the playoffs. And it's like if you take this roster they had this year and take off Gary Trent and Brooke Lopez and Damian Lillard, what is this team doing next season? Like Giannis and Kyle Kuzma, who couldn't even play in the playoffs. So that's where I say that this is bleak. I don't think when they won the championship a couple of years ago, anybody could have pictured it would go this horribly, this fast. But probably the best thing for them to do is to trade Giannis for a package of young players and picks and like replenish your picks, get some guys who can develop, get some good guys. That said, I have the Giannis trade, and I want you to buckle in for this one. The Milwaukee Bucks send Giannis Antetokounmpo to the Oklahoma City Thunder for Jalen Williams, the good one, Isaiah Hartenstein, Isaiah Joe, Osami Dang. I can't say his name right. I always mess up these names. Osami Dang, Miami's 25 first, Utah's top 8 protected first in 26, Denver's protected first in 27, Dallas's pick swap in 28, and then just a shitload of second round picks. If you're the Thunder, you've been accumulating all of these assets. What is the point of accumulating this stuff if you're not going to go after Giannis Antetokounmpo? And you just have Giannis and SGA for the next however many years. You keep Chet Holmgren too.
Yeah.
You have all these backups like Aaron Wiggins and all these other guys who can step up. But the headliner here is that you have SGA and Giannis for like 10 years. And if you're the Bucks, like Jalen Williams is the best guy you're going to get back, I think. Like if the Rockets aren't willing to include Şengün or Thompson,
Yeah.
like who's a better young guy you're going to get back than Jalen Williams? You get a shitload of picks because the Thunder have it. And you know what? Like if that's not enough for Bucks fans, here's another pick. Here's another pick. Here's another pick. What's the number? They have it. They have the money to pay for this. There's no team I would rather trade with than the Oklahoma City Thunder right now because they have it. They have the young guys. You don't like the young guys I named? Name 4 other young guys. Screw it. Take Jalen Williams out. Put Chet Holmgren in. Put Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren in. Who cares? You have Giannis and SGA, 2 of the best 4 players in the world for 10 years. That's the trade. That's the Giannis team, is the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah. Send it in.
Book it, Dan. And like, say that the Thunder don't win the championship this year. That's where they start looking at it and they're like, you know what? Fuck it. We can't make all these picks anyway. You can't even do it. You don't have enough roster space.
No.
What are you going to do? Pick a whole G League team? It's time. If Giannis wants to be traded,
Yeah.
Who are you saving your assets for if it's not a player the caliber of Giannis Antetokounmpo?
Yeah.
Make it Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, and like 2 first. Boom. I'll do it. If I'm the Thunder, done. Who do you want?
And
anyone and anything not named Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is on the table.
Yeah. I mean, who's going to be more driven to get young players and picks than the Bucks right now?
The key thing to keep in mind here too is that the Bucks need to stay competitive. I mean, I guess they don't have to, but there's no point in tanking.
No.
You're just going to get pick swapped.
Anyone who has ever watched basketball understands that the moment the Bucks trade away Giannis in this scenario, they're not competitive. That's not even part of the equation anymore. It's just like, what is the fastest track for us to get back to being competitive?
Yeah.
And that's with getting young players so they can play and a bunch of picks so you can put talent around them.
I legitimately, if I am the Thunder, I'm like, pick. You can have Jalen Williams or you can have Chet Holmgren, and you can have your next six favorite things, players or picks. Doesn't matter. Whatever ones you want, you take them, have them here, done. I don't know that you're getting a better deal from Brooklyn or Miami or Houston. Like Jalen Williams or Chet Holmgren, that's better than any player that any of those teams are offering, I guess, unless Amen Thompson's on the table. And even then, it's debatable. The last team on our
Yeah.
list is the LA Clippers, who just wholesale did not show up for game 7 against the Nuggets. And I love it
Yeah.
because it's so Harden and it's so Clippers and it's just chef's kiss. They're in a similar situation to the Bucks. They don't outright own their first round pick until 2030. And somehow they have a second round protected pick from the Memphis Grizzlies where it's protected 31 through 48, which I have never seen a protected second before, but that somehow makes the situation worse. So they're in the same situation basically, but they don't have the massive franchise reset button that we just talked about with Giannis. I threw out a Kawhi trade earlier where it's like, yeah, you get Jalen Green and Tari Eason. Those are some young guys who could develop, but like that's not the caliber of package that the Bucks are looking at. So it's dark, it's dismal. We've talked about the Clippers ad nauseum on this podcast and how the decision to trade SGA and all of their future picks for Paul George has pretty much permanently screwed this franchise. And I feel like that's why we find them here, Matt.
If they were going to do anything with this core, it had to be this year.
I
I
just thought,
don't see them being any more competitive next year, and these guys aren't getting any younger.
yeah, James Harden picking up that $36 million player option this offseason. See that one
Oh,
coming.
100%.
So paying Kawhi Leonard and James Harden $87 million. That's enjoyable for these results.
Peak basketball.
Honestly, like I would say probably the best asset they have right now is Zubac, the center. I wouldn't trade him. I wouldn't trade him this offseason. I listed out the Kawhi trade. I had mentioned before, like, when is Kawhi's value ever going to be this high again after the series he just had against Denver? This is probably the time to do something with
Yeah.
him and move on from this absolutely abysmal disaster that has been the last, what, 6 years? 6 years already? 5, 6 years of Clippers basketball? However long
Something like
Kawhi's
that.
been there?
Yeah.
Yeah, God, it's been a long time. But yeah, they're just bringing back the same team next year. They got 173 million committed. You know, pretty much everybody's under contract that was here this year except for Ben Simmons, and that's no great loss. So if it's not the Kawhi deal, I don't know what it is for them except for running it back and maybe being a play-in team next year. Maybe you make the playoffs and lose again in the first round, but on that dark note, that is it for us. As always, Fouled Out can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you get your podcast. You can hit us up on Gmail, fouledOutSports@gmail.com, and you can find our videos on TikTok, Fouled Out Sports Podcast. It is a long name, but you can't miss it. Actually started posting videos again on TikTok last week. I did the work. I put in the work. So there's clips from the podcast. I'm making videos with all sorts of stuff on the TikTok. Go check that out at Fouled Out Sports Podcast. It's mostly just me dancing, little TikTok dance. The people love it. Uh, Matt, you didn't say fuck the Knicks at all on this podcast. You got anything you want to say before we sign off?
Fuck the Knicks.
Yeah,
Fuck Jalen Brunson's flopping. Um, He's too good to be playing like that. He really is.
So as we speak, the Knicks are up 97-94 with 2:50 left in the fourth quarter in Boston. They were down by like a lot. They were down by like 20 the last time I looked at this. So might
Yeah.
have to go catch the end of that one.
Yeah, seriously.
That said, we are in the second round of the NBA playoffs. There are games every night, so everybody enjoy the games. Matt and I will be back next week to start talking about the second round action, start moving on in the NBA playoffs. But Matt, thanks for doing this with me. It was fun. Glad we got a chance to talk about the first round losers before we talk about the last 8 teams for the next couple
Yeah.
of weeks. I think we will start looking at having some guests on here soon. See if little Clinto and maybe Devin want to join. And oh man, feels good to be back in NBA basketball. So
Yeah, that was brief for me.
yeah, fun. I mean, dude, it's not like my team's doing any better. So
Yeah.
yeah, you know whose future I would put below all of the teams we talked about today?
Oh, Kings.
Them
What is you
Kangs.
doing?
Them Kangs. We back. The Kangs. But all right, buddy. I'll see you soon.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Bye,
Bye,
Mom.
Robin.